and welcome to the Islamic Finance Show, a program that aims to explore the growing world of Islamic finance. Today, we'll be examining the arguments around whether Islamic finance should rebrand itself in order to widen its appeal and build business. So, to get the discussion started, let me introduce my guest for today. Joining me is barrister Dr. Huma Soda, who's worked in both conventional and Islamic finance. And also joining me is Haliza Abdurrahim, legal counsel at Arabesque. She also holds the mantle of being named in the top 100 women in Islamic finance in the Woman Eye Report 2018. Welcome, ladies, to the show. It's good to have you both here. Huma, I'll start with you. The whole rebranding argument in relation to Islamic finance is an interesting one. There have been opposing views on this for quite some time now. Tell me, what's fueling this debate?
So as far as the issue of rebranding of Islamic finance is concerned, I would say I do not agree with the idea of rebranding Islamic finance because to me, the concept of rebranding anything which has something to do with faith in itself doesn't look right to me, because it means that actually we are negating the very concept of an inclusive society which ensures the harmonious existence of communities with different backgrounds and different cultural backgrounds, different ethnicity and different religious beliefs. However, having said that, I would say that it's the issue of rebrand. It's not about actually rebranding. It's and it's not about Islamic ethics or Islamic commercial ethics or Jewish commercial ethics or Christian commercial ethics. Because if we do a historical analysis, for instance, if we look at religious scriptures, for instance, Deuteronomy, which is a part of Torah and Old Testament, for instance. Gospel of St. Luke, which is part of New Testament and Bible. For example, Surah Al-Baqarah, which is part of Quran. So we can see the similarity of message when it comes to the ethics, the commercial ethics. So as far as the commercial ethics is concerned, there is similarity. However, in that sense, I don't mind, and I am indifferent whether we exclude it or include the prefix Islamic, because it's the unique decision of that particular financial institution to include it. Or to exclude
Haliza, what are your thoughts on this?
That's interesting. I actually agree with Huma in the sense that there is great similarity between Islamic finance and conventional, sustainable or ethical investing. So then, if it is similar and if the core principles are the same, why do we have to fix the label of Islamic on Islamic finance or Islamic investing? At the end of the day, you're looking at a product that has the same core principles, that has the same core structure. And you don't take anything away from that particular product just because you take away the label of Islamic at the front of it. Also, the other thing that I think we need to think about is the fact that Islamic finance has been in existence for about 50 years. And through all these 5 decades, it has not been that successful in being able to explain to the layperson what is Islamic investing or what is Islamic finance. And so just by having the label Islamic doesn't mean that the layperson is able to appreciate exactly what are the concepts within that product that makes it Islamic. However, when you take the label of ethical investing, most lay people will understand what is morally responsible, what is ethical. You know, people understand that being ethical means that you do not have slave labor in your company, for example. So because the concept or the idea of what is ethical is more readily understandable to the investing public, I think, therefore, that it is easier for people to understand that a product is ethical rather than for people to understand that a product is Islamic. At the end of the day, however you label that product, the core principles of that particular product is not going to change. If you call an Islamic product an ethical product, that does not make that particular product less Islamic. The same screening guidelines will still apply.
Huma,
I would like to add to this. Surely I agree with Haliza, but there is one more thing. If any financial product is ethical or, say, for instance, sustainable, it is not necessarily Islamic as well. So we need to keep in mind at the same time that there is a community which is Muslim community, and they're looking for those products, and particularly millennials, they're looking for those kind of sustainable and ethical financial products which are also Sharia compliant, which are in tandem with with the teachings of their faith. So, for instance, a windmill investment in a windmill project, which is financed through an interest-based loan, is surely ethical, surely sustainable, but it is not Sharia compliant.
However, critics, would say, yeah, you make a very valid point, you both do. But, what critics are saying is that Islamic finance could align itself more with ethical finance without having to compromise the Sharia compliance element. All it needs to perhaps do is showcase that more so that a wider consumer base has a better understanding of what Islamic finance means. I mean, the theoretical appeal of Islamic finance is that it's not just for Muslims, it's for non-Muslims too. So that is their argument.
I would agree with that. I mean, Islamic finance is not just for Muslims, and putting a label that it is Islamic finance or Islamic investing tends to automatically tell other people who are non-Muslims that this is not for you. But that's not the intention. The intention to actually attract people who are interested in investing in an ethical manner. And if you look at the size of the investing, the ethical investment at the moment, ethical investments comes up to about 30.7 trillion. Islamic investments come up to about 1.7 trillion. That's the Islamic finance industry. 1.7 trillion is barely 0.5% of the size of the ethical investment industry. So therefore, that your audience, the ethical investing audience, is a much bigger audience, and that is the audience that we should be going for in order to help build Islamic finance, and it's for the industry to continue to grow.
Huma, one of the bottom lines of any business or any financial sector, whether it be conventional or Islamic, is profit. You can't escape this. So with that in mind, as the Islamic finance sector grows, and it's not growing at the rate perhaps I think most industry experts would like. Also, if we look at 2008 financial crash, there was a vacuum created at that point which Islamic finance could have filled, putting forward its ethical proposals, yet that didn't happen. So in order to widen its appeal, don't you think the bottom line of it being business is profit, that something needs to be done?
So I would say I would add to the comments made by Haliza. I do agree with it, and I'm saying that it's not necessary to include in the title or in the labels of financial institutions that these are Islamic financial institutions. However, I would still say that there would be a certain section for example, in promotion materials of those particular products which are Sharia compliant, to let the community, which is also.
How would that be articulated then? How do you see that?
So, for example, in Britain we have Al Rayyan Bank. So the name in itself does not include the word Islamic. However, when we look at their products, when we look at the product information, we do find that they do mention that this is Sharia compliant, this is compliant with Islamic law. And as far as your point is concerned regarding profit maximization, so I would say here, say it is even for ethical or sustainable investments or Sharia compliant investments, they may not necessarily be profitable in initial stages. For example, solar panels, initially they were too expensive, and later now we can see they're affordable. So these kind of ventures, they may not be initially guaranteeing profit maximization, but that's not the purpose of any of these, whether it is ethical investments or Sharia compliant investments. Rather it is actually profit optimization. That means not only maximizing the returns for the shareholders, but also taking care of other stakeholders, which is environment, which is community, and which is society. So I would say it is more about profit optimization as opposed to profit maximization.
Haliza, with this in mind, if we look at the past 11 years, since the financial crash, thereabouts, there was a vacuum created at that point, which could have been filled by Islamic finance. The marketing strategy could have been different. Why hasn't that been capitalized upon?
I agree with you there. In terms of the campaigning, in terms of the marketing strategies of Islamic financial institutions, I think there is a dearth in terms of their marketing strategy. There is a dearth in terms of how they should market to their own customers. I've always said that there are very many Muslims, and the majority of Muslims, unfortunately, do not understand Islamic investing or Islamic finance. The fault lies with the people who are producing the product, ourselves, because we are unable to actually go to the lay public and say, this is what Islamic investing or this is what Islamic finance is.
Why is that happening?
There could be many reasons. I think one of the reasons is because the people who work within the industry have been doing this for many years. And when the first set of Islamic finance practitioners produce pamphlets saying, this is Islamic, therefore you as a Muslim should invest or should use this product, that has been copycat and that has been used over the years.
Do you think part of the reason of that could be because the initial consumers targeted were Muslim, and since then, it's been very evident that the ethical sector has been growing quite fast, and more people are very interested in that. So suddenly there was a change of heart, perhaps?
No, I completely agree with you. And not only that, the current Muslims who are, let's say the Muslim millennials, right, they tend to be interested not just in investing in an Islamic manner, but they also want to invest in an ethical manner. The millennials, more than 85% of millennials nowadays want ethical investing, want ethical products. These are the people who grew up watching, knowing about World Wildlife Fund, knowing about, anti-slavery, knowing and supporting anything that we nowadays consider as perhaps new. But they grew up with the idea that the world must be a just place and everything must be ethical. So now the public that we're catering to is not just the Muslims who want to invest in an Islamic manner, but also Muslims who want to invest in an ethical manner. At the same time, you also have a large majority of the global population now of the 18 to 35-year-old range who want to invest in an ethical manner. So if you put that two together, surely the public that you want to cater for is the people who want to invest in an ethical manner, not just Islamic manner.
I do agree with Haliza's point, and I would like to add that actually it is more about, it is not only about the marketing or the branding of Islamic finance. Rather, I would say the Islamic finance, it has to take steps to get to a next level, which is initially, as you rightly said, that it was to target Islamic or Muslim population. The next steps that should be taken, that to put those ideals or philosophy of Islamic finance into practice, which means, for example, taking steps such as in the commitment from say, for instance, board of directors to relationship managers to engage in ethical and sustainable financing and investment, and the reporting of those outcomes in the annual reports, for instance, sustainability report, in accordance with the internationally recognized, say, standards and guidelines. For instance, now FCA is considering, they have issued a discussion paper. Hong Kong, their Securities and Future Commission, they have now climate-based financial disclosures. So we need these kind of information in the annual reports, and that too should also be audited. So we have a kind of credible information, and the investors, as Haliza is, I agree with you completely. The millennials and the population, which is who are now more interested in ethical initiatives. So they need to see that, the outcome is not only ethical and sustainable investments and financing, and the information which is being passed on to public, the way it is being disclosed, it is according to certain internationally recognized parameters, and that has been attested and verified and audited by the auditors. So we need to take steps to regain and I would say, or maybe gain the trust of customers, and that's how we can solve the issue of customer outreach and enhance and increase the customer base of Islamic financial institutions.
Obviously, transparency is of key issue. Consumer confidence in the financial sector was devastated with the financial crisis, and is that part of the issue still moving forward? Getting credibility back for the financial sector, whether it's conventional or Islamic?
It could be, it may well be. Perhaps people who actually saw the crash happen 10 years ago are now thinking, well, we don't trust banks, we don't trust the products that you offer, and so we want something else, we want something different. And that's where the attraction of ethical investing, ethical finance becomes even more prominent, because people are now saying, I don't want the old-fashioned way of banking, I don't want the old-fashioned way of investing, I want something new. I want to invest in something that will be sustainable, something that will help the world, something that will last for a lot longer. And I don't want to invest in companies that pollute the earth. I want to invest in companies that actually promote good governance, in companies that actually support climate, support environment, and have steps to actually tackle climate change, for example. So definitely, the lack of trust in the old products are what is also perhaps pushing the new millennials, pushing the current generation to go for products which are ethical.
I just want to have a look at the argument for. Industry experts and critics who argue for maintaining the prefix Islamic say, the halal tag serves as an amazing marketing tool to showcase what Islamic finance is about, and to capitalize on the growth of the Muslim community globally. I mean, reports suggest by 2030, Muslims globally will make up 25% of the global population. And as this community grows, so will the demand for products and services that are in line with these people's religious principles and beliefs.
Can I just say, I don't believe that, firstly, the two things. One, the fact that there is a projected increase in the Muslim population that has been projected for some time now. That has not necessarily led to a take-up of Islamic finance or Islamic investing because of the lack of knowledge amongst the Muslim population about what is Islamic. Whereas I think that if you have a product that has the key terms ethical in front of its name, the population will actually understand what their product stands for. So in that sense, I'm not sure that fixing a label that this is an Islamic bank or an Islamic product will help market that product. For example, we have a shortbread, a shortbread that's suitable for vegetarian, right? Now you're going to see the label suitable for vegetarian at the very bottom. You don't have a label on the shortbread itself saying vegetarian shortbread. There isn't a need to say that this is a vegetarian shortbread because the label at the very bottom is there, and that is what I think we need to do. So we need to say this product is ethical. At the very we could have a small label saying it is Sharia compliant, it is halal, so that can cater for the Muslim
with
public.
that, I can refer to, we've got a couple of rebrands that have happened within the Islamic financial sector. Of course, the very obvious one, Islamic Bank of Britain, which rebranded to Al Rayan. Also, over in the Middle East, you have Noor Islamic Bank, which became Noor Bank, and you've got Abu Dhabi Islamic Bank, which with its international business goes under the name of Abu Dhabi Islamic Bank. So they don't have Islamic in the titles, yet they are Sharia compliant.
If you're talking about, say, for instance, Al Rayan Bank, so it was actually established sometime in 2004, and it was a time when they wanted to attract Islamic community and Islamic and Muslim customers, and it is now 2019, and it is a time when there is a significant portion of Muslim population, including a third or fourth Muslim generation here in UK, who are definitely more interested in those financial products which are ethical and sustainable, as well as I would still say that they're also interested in the product that it is also compliant with Islamic law. And I do agree, as I said, I partially agree with her, and I do agree that that should not be you cannot keep on selling a product just by saying that this is halal or this is Sharia compliant, because that is the formalistic Sharia compliance. That compliance, if it is in substance or in true letter and spirit, that would only actually transmit the benefits to the real benefits of, for instance, sustainable economic growth. And here I would quote Christine Lagarde, IMF head, who actually appreciated the post-financial crisis. She appreciated that this is actually the equity-based financing and equity-based investment, which is going to promote sustainable economic growth. And this risk sharing or equity-based financing is actually the core theme of Islamic finance. So we have yet to, the Islamic finance community or Islamic financiers or Islamic financial institutions, they have yet to, I would say, come up with the innovative products which truly showcase and truly reflect the true ideals of Islamic finance, we cannot hide behind the labels, and we cannot keep on selling, because as she has rightly pointed out, and all of us we know that now the customers and millennials, they are more aware. So
I just want to just bring in a very good example, Turkey. You know, Islamic banks there are described as participation banks. Obviously, it's a very secular society, and they have like a secular regulation. So do you think we could take some examples or some influence or inspiration from how Turkey implement Islamic finance? Haliza?
Well, my preference, I currently work with an ethical, I suppose there's a loose term for it. We believe in sustainable investments. I work in a firm where we believe in sustainable investments. So when you use the Turkey example and you say, participating banks, although I understand what, the reason they had to go for that title rather than saying it's an Islamic bank, I don't think it truly reflects what Islamic banks are doing or what Islamic institutions are doing. Again, I go back to the core concept of Islamic investing, which is that we are trying to create a product that invests in an ethical manner. And what is that? That means we don't invest in alcohol, we don't invest in tobacco, we don't support the manufacturing of weapons, etc. Now, if those are the guidelines that we abide by, then surely what we should be doing is fixing a label that actually is self-explanatory, and the label being ethical, for example. This is self-explanatory. What is ethical?
So it boils down to the industry then. I mean, the message I'm getting here today is the industry has got huge responsibility in showcasing its products, its services, not just in an Islamic way, but also the fundamental principles and ethics of Islamic finance, which is, as you mentioned earlier, risk sharing, as you mentioned, sustainability and so on. So the onus lies on the industry then.
And unfortunately, there's a recent study which was conducted in 2017. Unfortunately, only less than 10% out of 115 Islamic banks, they have included any information or report on sustainability within their annual reports. And it's very recent that banks like, for example, Al Baraka, they're committed and they are taking steps towards achieving the UN's 17 SDGs.
Do you think others will follow example?
Well, I think they should, and they will, simply because, not just because I think the market is asking for more transparency, but also the regulators are coming out with guidelines, and regulators are saying, I want you to actually address these points when you produce your reports. So because the exchanges, the regulators, they're all saying, you actually have to produce reports that explain to us how you're addressing environmental issues, governance issues, so how you impact society, etc. So they will have to change at some point.
Okay, Haliza, Huma, unfortunately, we've run out of time, but it's been incredibly insightful, so thank you. As mentioned earlier, we'll be exploring a different aspect or issue related to Islamic finance as we progress through the series, so do tune in every week. Also, if you'd like to comment or share your thoughts and opinions on what we've discussed today, then tweet us at Islam Channel or contact us via Facebook on Islam Channel TV with hashtag The Islamic Finance Show. We'd love to hear your thoughts and views. Next week, we'll discuss the significance and the role of the Sharia gold standard. Also, it'll be our last show for the series next week, so be sure to tune in. My thanks again to my guests for joining us today, and of course to you at home for watching. See you next time. Goodbye.